Um, a legendary teacher, to me, I think about my legendary teacher in my life was my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Murphy. And she impacted my life because she stayed consistent. She made a relationship with me and then stayed consistent throughout my entire elementary school years, my high school years, and I went on to take over for her when she retired. So I became the kindergarten teacher after her, and so she mentored me. And when I think of a legendary teacher, she was caring, thoughtful. She just devoted her time and energy. She always smiled at her students, and she was just a loving person. So I think the relationship you form with your student makes a legendary teacher.
I think legendary teachers are legendary when they build relationships before anything else, when they remember that our students are little people who need us as role models before the people who give them homework or who teach them. So when we teach a whole child rather than just the curriculum, I think that makes a teacher legendary and memorable for their students.
So a legendary teacher to me would be a teacher that kind of leaves a profound impact positively on someone's life, kind of gets to know their students beyond the classroom. For me personally, my legendary teacher, I remember still to this day, Mr. Burr from high school. He was my high school English teacher. He actually was the reason that I love reading and English so much, which is what I teach now, and it's my thing. I love it so much. He was kind of a father figure for me when I didn't have one, and he was someone that I could talk to, confide in, gave me unbiased advice, and really went above and beyond to make sure both my sister and I were taken care of and listened to and heard. And he just still to this day, he's passed now, but still to this day, I think about him all the time, and just the impact that he made on me as a person. So he would be my definition of a legendary teacher.
I think it's hard to get like a certain list of attributes because the legendary teacher for me might not be the same for you. I think you could take any kid in any classroom with the right teacher and it can make a legendary situation for all parties involved. My legendary teacher was my 6th grade ELA teacher, Miss Gay Rice. I was already a reader, but she turned it from like a passive activity to a culture and to a personality trait, and she made it basically my whole life. And it's really full circle now as a librarian, and some of the books that she changed my life with, I'm now changing the lives of my students with.
I cannot talk about legendary teachers without talking about my mom. I am a teacher because of my mom. I grew up in her kindergarten classroom, watching her instill the love of learning in her students and their eagerness to come to school each day because of her. Everyone wanted to be a Morecambe's Martian. Each year, my mom had about a half a dozen class pets. Last year, one of her parents told me that her daughter was going to college to become a veterinarian because of the love of learning and caring for animals that started in my mom's room. I call my students the superstars because I think they're out of this world. We like to engage in fun and memorable activities, including our class pet, Maple. I hope they look back fondly on my legacy the way my mom's students think of her.
I think a legendary teacher not only loves each child, but makes sure that they feel seen and worthy. I went back and visited my 1st grade classroom when I was 30 years old. And I walked up to my 1st grade teacher, and immediately she pulled out a photo album and she showed me my pictures and started showing me pictures of me and told me stories what I did. And immediately I felt that I was as special to her as she was to me, and that to me is legendary.
So the qualities and actions that I think define a legendary teacher, in my example, I would like to talk about a specific teacher I had in high school, actually. And this teacher was so legendary that he inspired me to become a teacher, and that is why I am a teacher today. He taught military history, and he had such a passion for education that he actually would come to my track meets, he would come to my races, he would do all of these wonderful and incredible things just to go above and beyond. And I always thought to myself, like, I want to be a teacher like Mr. Smith. And so I told him that I wanted to be a teacher like him. And so he ended up actually setting up an office for me in his office. So I had an office in the military history office, and he let me grade papers, and he kind of just trained me in being a teacher. And ever since then, I just kind of took the path of being an educator. And I feel that Mr. Smith is legendary because I remember him today. I talk about him today. He inspires me today, all the things I do. And so I just always think if Mr. Smith is out there, wherever he is, probably in New York, I just hope he knows what a great impact he had on my life. And I'm hoping that I have the same impact as well.
Well, I believe that legendary teachers are ones that make lasting impacts on the students that they serve. Sometimes those impacts might be academic. A student may pass a certain level or move up in reading, or they pass the state test to be able to get to go to the next grade level. They might be more independent functioning skills. Maybe the kid is finally responsible and they can remember their homework and their glasses and their hearing aids, and no one has to tell them anymore. As a teacher of the deaf, I find that a lot of my work builds on modeling language for students, for thinking, for problem solving, for connecting with one another. And it's been my privilege to be able to be with students who were learning language and developing language for that moment when they first realized that everything has a name and I can learn that name. And when I learn that name, the power it opens for them when they discover that there are no more limitations. And I think that those are the kind of experiences that when a teacher and a student share those important critical developing skills, that they really leave an imprint on their students. And that skill is not something that the kid will ever lose, and they'll get to keep it forever. And that's what I think leaving an imprint on your student makes you legendary.
I believe a legendary teacher is a teacher who can hear all the things that students cannot say. And I hope my students would feel that I'm legendary because I want them to always feel like they're being encouraged, and I want them to feel like they can believe in themselves and that I always believe in them.
I think a legendary teacher is defined by their ability to connect with students and to learn what interests they have and learn more about them to just what score they are and what answer they put on a test. You get to know their interests, their hobbies, the things they do outside of school, and you get to intertwine that with your, lessons, and the abilities to build and foster those relationships come from those connections. And I can remember my kindergarten teacher from 30 years ago because of her way of just getting to know us and fostering that relationship and being silly and goofy. And I can still remember our one-eyed, one-horn, flying purple people eater lesson because of her. And now I also teach that lesson because of her. So she has truly been a legendary teacher.
I think a legendary teacher is someone who has the ability to teach. And in that ability, they feel like every student can contribute to the class, and they feel like that they are part of the class. An example I would give, for example, would be in my classroom during a math talk. During math talks, all students can feel like they can contribute to the classroom and have a part. They feel successful in that way. They are either talking to their peers, they can demonstrate strategies by modeling, they can just be part of the conversation. What do they notice? So even without using numbers, everyone feels like they can contribute that day.
I think a legendary teacher is someone who unlocks students' potential and helps them thrive. I think they challenge them every day and they bring magic into the classroom. An example of a legendary teacher was my first grade teacher, Miss Jones. She would do these amazing interdisciplinary units that were so incredibly memorable. I still brag about them to my students today. One particularly notable unit was with a novel study on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And she even went so far as to take us on a field trip to Peterbrook to see how chocolate was made. We did mathematics with it, we did science, we did reading, and it was just the most amazing time, especially candy for a first grader was definitely very magical.
I think a legendary teacher is someone who is creative, determined, and has the strength to always go that extra mile with relationships. When I think of an example of a legendary teacher, I think of my kindergarten teacher, who over 20 years later, I still have a lasting relationship with, and she still continues to serve as an inspiration.
I think qualities of a legendary teacher are ones that have to yell at their students so much they lose their voice. Just kidding, but a legendary teacher to me is somebody who's made such a lasting impact that it's going to continue to impact their students for years to come. Specifically, I can think of two teachers, and interestingly enough, they're both in St. Johns County because I'm a product of the St. Johns County school system. I had an English teacher in middle school, Mr. Coughlin, and something that he really instilled in us was he wanted us to think for ourselves. He never pressured us to think like him or think like the characters in the stories we were reading or what we wrote about. He just wanted to give us the tools to make our own decisions and feel confident in that. And that's something I carry into my own teaching. I want them to be able to research on their own and make their own choices and make their own decisions and feel confident when they stand up and make those choices. So that's something that's legendary to me. And then I think of my IB coordinator, Alita Dresbach. She really didn't put us in a box. She never put any student that she worked with to fit into one little box. Although we were all in the same IB program, she wanted all of us to have our own path. She really took time to get to know each of us and help us make decisions on our future. And I just try to do that with all my students. I try to get to know each of them on a personal level so I can help them be who they want to be.
A legendary teacher is one who works incredibly hard to connect with students. They ignite a passion and excitement, and not only for their subject, but for learning in general. I think that we all have the capacity to become a legendary teacher. I truly am surrounded by legendary teachers daily. I aspire to be one of them. I think that we all have the capacity to be legendary. Sometimes we get bogged down with the details and the minutia, but that's when we need to spark each other.
The qualities that define legendary teachers, I think every teacher is legendary in the outright. As soon as they walk through the doors and open up their classrooms to the students. I think that just opening up their hearts to these children and students. And then I've had legendary teachers throughout my career, and I don't want to name any. But they know who they are, and they're the reason I'm here today. They boosted me up, and I want to do the same to the kids, and that's how I know that I'm a true teacher, is if I see the confidence in the students leaving the grade levels that I teach.
I think that a legendary teacher is someone who has complete honesty. That's honesty with their profession, honesty with their peers, and honesty with their students. For me, it's also about being real with the students. I meet them on their level, and we have this thing where we interact in the same as like, I respect you, you respect me, and it works very well for this population. And you know, a legendary teacher is also one that they're okay to admit mistakes, and that's because they learn from them. You know, if we're legendary, then we are continual learners. We don't stop. So if I can instill that in my students, then I think that that is one step going the right direction. The final thing I would say is that, you know, I had a teacher that really influenced me and that I think was legendary. His name was Mr. David Toll back in Clinch County. He was my star teacher. This guy taught me to be honest with yourself and about what you love. And for me as like a nerdy little kid, that was great because that taught me to fully open myself up to the world and just go at it with that attitude that I wanted to be in that nerdy little kid. And we did film studies with him, and he would teach us to look at different perspectives and try to figure out, emphasize with what a person is going through. I think if a teacher keeps all of those qualities, they'll have the best results for their kids.
I think a legendary teacher is one who affects change. Her or his students are never the same. Their school is never the same. And I had a legendary teacher. I teach English, and my high school literature teacher was amazing. The books that she chose changed me, and I've never been the same. So that's what a legacy is. You leave it better than you found it.
A legendary teacher is one that reaches the students right where they're at. They look for ways to help them grow and learn. They themselves have to have that growth mindset, constantly learning, pouring into themselves. A legendary teacher is one that goes to work and looks for the way to impact one student, even if it's just one student that day. It's one that you remember. My legendary teacher was my 8th grade ELA teacher, Mrs. Howard. And she met all of us right where we were at. She gave us lessons that were hands-on, that were music-driven, poetry-driven, but she always looked at us as the person or the 12-year-old that we were. And that's what defines a legendary teacher.
I think the qualities that define a legendary teacher is someone who invests in you, and by investing, showing love. I had a teacher in high school named Mr. Richards, and he invested in us every day. We knew he was there for us because before we could even enter his room, he shook each of our hands and welcomed us into his classroom. When we went in, he wasn't just our teacher, we felt like we were a family. I think that that is what I try to do every day in my classroom, and taking a second to listen, taking a second to hug. My kids know I give hugs away for free. So I think that just loving them where they're at and making it feel like our classroom is a family, that makes you legendary. They're gonna remember those teachers that loved them from the minute they walked in their room, just like Mr. Richards did for me.
I think the qualities that define a legendary teacher are just to inspire students and engage with them and build really strong, solid relationships. I had an amazing teacher, Miss Krugman, who was my 11th grade English teacher, and what struck me most of all was she was so passionate about what she did and what she was teaching that you couldn't help enjoy Beowulf. And she kept that bar high though, so we were never taking any shortcuts and we wanted to do well. She connected well with us. She made sure that we weren't just one of many of her students. She helped us grow, and I feel like she inspired me on the path I'm on now, where I just feel like if I'm teaching something, I gotta be all in and help those kids grow.
The qualities that I believe defines a legendary teacher, empathy and building relationships, not only with the students but with their families, so that you kind of get to know where they're at every day. One thing I've kind of learned over the years is to learn to laugh at yourself. So that way when the kids leave your classroom, they don't just remember you, but they remember how they felt being in your classroom. And for me, that was my 3rd and actually 5th grade teacher. I had her both years. Her name was Miss Weaver. But I remember very vividly how I felt being in that classroom, very comfortable, safe, fun, but also was really into the learning. So.
Okay, the qualities and actions that I believe define a legendary teacher are pushing students to be the best versions of themselves. I think the first thing you have to do is build a trusting relationship with them and then show them that they're capable of achieving things that they never thought they were.
It's a teacher that when you walk into the room, you want to be there. You like wake up in the morning and you're looking forward to that class. You're looking forward to being with that person. You're looking forward to being in the class. You feel safe in the class. You leave going, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I going to learn something new? What's going to happen next in that classroom? I had someone that was a golf coach at the high school, and she paid attention to me and made me feel like I was a person, not just another one in the crowd. She's the one that actually got me to be a math teacher. I would have never considered it. I said accountant, interior decorator in my yearbook. And she was like, I can get you a math teacher scholarship. Why don't you do that? I'm like, well, okay. And if I had done that, my life would be so different. I love my job. Love my job. Legendary teacher.
I believe that what makes a teacher a legendary teacher is someone that is a champion for all the students, that puts the needs of all the students above anything else, builds a rapport with them, finds what works for them to make them achieve their successful. I had 2 teachers in high school, my ROTC commanders, Captain Williams and Master Chief McFarland, who no matter what the issue was, they were there. They were sounding boards for no matter what, whether it was an issue within the ranks or an issue outside in the classrooms. They followed up, made sure that we were successful everywhere we needed to be. And Captain Williams still follows up with me on a daily basis. So.
Okay, I believe a legendary teacher is somebody that makes the classroom exciting, engaging, makes it fun. I think a legendary teacher has to be consistent. They have to be patient. I think they bring in a lot of nurturing characteristics, and they make learning fun. Some of the students you're with more, at school than, you may be with your own children at home. So making a safe environment, a healthy environment, and a fun place for students to learn.
The qualities or actions I feel define a legendary teacher are the teachers that teach from their heart. So not from a book necessarily or from a script or a structure, but from who they are as a person. So taking what their lived experiences are and bringing that into the classroom as well, providing an emotional element, a relationship element, and being able to build that rapport with their students that extends beyond their 4 walls. So it goes into their homes because they're talking about that teacher when they get home. It goes beyond just that classroom because they're talking to their friends at lunch about it. So being able to build that connection that's not just subject-based, but is from the heart.
According to me, teaching is not just about making students get good grades. It is students just, they learn, they graduate and move on. But to make them give them a lasting and memorable impression, and to transform their approach and thoughts towards learning is what makes the teacher legendary. I've received several messages over the years from my students, and I would like to share a few with you. This is from a student called Lindsay. In all my honesty, you have been the best teacher I've ever heard. I might not have even passed if I had any other teacher, but thanks to you, I did so with flying colors. I had never ever been this confident in math before, but now I can say with 100% certainty that I could teach everything I've learned to someone else. I'm never scared of big tests anymore because your class has taught me that I'm smart enough to pass. Thank you for being so nurturing to me this past year and also so kind. I promise that I'll never forget the impact you have made on this.
To me, someone who is a legendary teacher is someone who sees a whole child, and they don't only look at academics, but they really look at the personal side of their children's lives and get to know kind of all the bits and pieces of what makes up their classroom, and so that they're able to really then hit the academics once they have better met the needs of their students first.
I think a legendary teacher is somebody who goes above and beyond the curriculum they're teaching. I think a legendary teacher is not defined by the subject that is taught in the class, but the relationships that are built by the students they are teaching. I think a legendary teacher is someone who encourages students to learn and convinces them to learn, not only to take their class specifically, but then to go out and above and beyond the classroom and pursue their own knowledge.
So when I think of what makes a legendary teacher, I think about the impact that the person has had. And when I think back to teachers in my own life that have been legendary, what I think about is not what they've taught me per se, but how they made me feel. And I think that's something that I think all teachers have the ability every day to make students feel loved and make students feel safe, and to know that somebody believes in them. And when students know that, they're gonna do anything for you. And teachers in my own life, that has happened to me, I would do anything for them.
So what makes a teacher legendary? I could easily say somebody who is engaging, prepared, or compassionate. But in my mind, what makes a teacher legendary is the teacher who can make students believe that they can do hard things. And for example, many decades ago, Father Charles was my pre-calculus teacher in high school, and I'm an English teacher, so it was hard, but yet he could make me believe that I could do it. And I did. I was able to do it. But what also made Father Charles legendary was he was a priest who could surf. So that's why we will always remember him forever. But yeah, that's it.
So in my experience, a legendary teacher would be somebody that has impact in your life throughout, regardless of how many years has passed, somebody that has made a permanent impact on your life. I have relationships, rapports with students that go back 20-something years, and they still reach out and they still contact me. One in particular, I have a student that I taught back in 2005. 15 years later, he came back to see me to let me know that I was his inspiration for going back to school and actually getting his master's in education and then going on. And he's actually a principal now in Orange County.
A legendary teacher. What I think a legendary teacher is someone you think about long after you're out of school. Somebody who affects your life. I mean, you think about people that we think are legends, musicians, actors, sports figures. I mean, they live on. So I guess for me, it would be a teacher who affects your life, hopefully in a positive way, that maybe moves you to do something different in your life or do something better in your life, or maybe just makes you want to come to school every day. Somebody who makes you feel valued and loved and safe, so that you can come do all that learning stuff. I have a teacher, I'm almost, well, I won't say how old I am, but 50 years later, I think of that teacher often, and how she was the only reason I wanted to go to school when things were not okay for me, in a personal way. And I just, that's kind of my passion, giving that back to kids.
I think the word legendary is pretty strong, and I think my goal is more about leaving a legacy. And when I was young, my mom used to say that my brothers and I were her greatest legacy, and I always used to equate the word legacy with love and family. And as a theater and music teacher, when my kids come through my program, I like to tell them that they're now a member of my family and a place where they belong and that they're loved. But it also comes with this. When they move on to high school, because I teach middle school, I tell them that they always have to come home to visit. And year after year, they come back from high school, from college, from adulthood. They do come home to visit, and they come home for a hug. They come home to tell me what legends that they are becoming. And to me, that's the greatest legacy.
I think actions and qualities that define a teacher as legendary are teachers that provide opportunities for students to push themselves beyond what they thought they were capable of. Teachers that differentiate instructions and reach students on a personal level, that help create a drive within the student to be successful.
A legendary teacher is someone who builds a sense of community in their classroom and leaves a lasting impression long into adulthood.
I think a legendary teacher cares. Your job is to educate them, but it's to take them past that. Are you teaching them to be a better leader? Are you teaching them to be a better person? Are you teaching them to be a better individual? And how is that impact going to affect them in their lives moving forward?
So a legendary teacher, it's all about the relationships with the students. To be that person that they want to come see every day means they'll show up to school, they will try very hard in your class because it's a place they want to be and want to go to. they talk about leaving your legacy behind. Well, that's what we do every day with our students, is we hopefully are a good impact on their lives. And when they look back, having to be that one person that they look back on with fond memories, I can't think of a greater honor.
So I think a legendary teacher would be somebody who makes students want to come to their class, who makes students feel valued and important, somebody who makes their students feel like it's just as important for them to be there as it is for, the teacher to be there.
So I think what qualities or actions define a legendary teacher are one that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. When I was in 5th grade, I had a teacher named Betsy Pryor, and I ended up being her student teacher when I was in college. And I remember what she told me as a student teacher. She said, try to find your way into the dinner table conversation each night. And if you do that in a positive way, those kids are going to remember you. You're going to make a big impact on their family and their friends. And so I've always remembered that. What am I going to do today at school that kids are going to remember and they're going to want to tell their parents at the dinner table? So I think that's kind of my definition of a legendary teacher, somebody who you keep on thinking about even when the school day ends.
I believe a legendary teacher is somebody that has a great sense of humor. I think teachers can have high expectations and great lessons and still make it really funny.
The qualities or traits that I feel like defines a teacher, legendary teacher. Just this year, what was surprising was one of my former students came to me, which is also nominated as Teacher of the Year. And she was saying that because of me, that she wanted to be a teacher just like me. So with the respect and teaching students how to have the confidence that they're able to be successful in school, then those are the traits that we try to make legendary in our students.
Qualities for legendary, it's actually kind of easy. It's somebody who cares, it's somebody who wants to build relationships, and it's somebody that no matter how bad that kid is, they can find that one little silver lining and take it and run with it and make that kid feel like they can conquer anything. It's taking that one kid who doesn't even want to be at school and find that one thing that not only do they want to be at school by the end of the year, but they want to do well in school. It's somebody who wants to not only build relationships with their students, but build relationships with their community outside the 4 walls of their school and their families. And I know this because I live in the community where I teach, and there's nothing better than having a kid that when you taught them in 6th grade is handing you a wedding invitation, is handing you a graduation invitation, and comes out of their way at the grocery store to come and say hi to you. And a perfect example for me was this on Facebook pops up one day, and it's this kid I taught in 1994 named Russell. And he said, I'm a teacher because of you on social media. And that, to me, that's legendary. I don't know what I did, but I did something right, at least for one kid. And that's it.
Sure. So whenever I hear legendary, I think of a movie quote from Sandlot, which is one of my favorite movies. It says that heroes are remembered, but legends never die. And so for me, if you're trying to attach something to legendary status, I think of what generational impacts you can make, and that's beyond one generation. So for me, a specific story I have is a student of mine that wrote an essay of a meaningful impact that happened in their life. They wrote it for a different teacher, and then they shared it with me. And that story was about the relationship that they developed with me in the classroom, and that inspired them to believe in themselves more so than they've ever had in their life, even though they're going through a difficult time. And for me, I know I made that impact with one generation, so I think the next step is that I hopefully make a lasting impact where that student remembers that feeling, that positive impact that I was able to make, and then I'm hopeful that that student can do the same thing when they get to serve in a leadership role, whether it's in the household, as a family member, or whether it's in the community or whatever profession they choose, that they can then do the same thing for another generation. Because if legends never die, we need to go beyond 50 years. If we can get 100 or more, then that's the goal of, I think, achieving legendary status.
I think that a legendary teacher is someone who has or creates a lasting relationship with their students, an impactful one. And I think in order to have an impactful relationship, it really needs to start with building that relationship. And when you build that relationship with your students, you're going to figure out their needs. And a legendary teacher does their best to meet those needs, whatever they are, academic, social, emotional, even physical. I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Harvey, did that. She met the needs of a student. And as someone in their mid-20s, we're gonna go with 20s, so someone in their mid-20s, this was a while ago, but it still stuck with me. We had a student in the class who had a dairy allergy. And back in the 1980s, shouldn't have said that, back in the 1980s, dairy allergies, food allergies weren't really prevalent. But every time someone brought in a birthday treat, this student couldn't participate. And it would make him sad, and my teacher she ended up going out to the store and getting him his own food, so that every time there was a birthday celebration, he had something to eat. And she did it quietly, without making a big fuss over it. And I remember asking her once, why does Eric get to have crackers when we have cookies? And she said, well, he shouldn't miss out because he can't eat the same foods as us. And so it wasn't something impactful like a really great science experiment that Mrs. Harvey did. She just saw a need and she met it. And so for me, when I became a teacher, that was what I wanted. I wanted to figure out the needs of my students and meet them. And so maybe that was helping someone get better academically. Maybe it was extra teaching or challenging or reteaching or celebrating small successes. Or maybe it was making sure that I had food in my classroom so that they didn't go hungry. Or maybe it was looking at that student who suffered from crippling anxiety and worry and being an ear to listen and someone to say, it's okay, we'll get through this together, or teach them some really helpful strategies, or buy them a slam doll so that they could beat it when they need to get it out. Or maybe it's when you have two diabetic students in your class, and at the same time they both start to crash. And you have to monitor their Dexcom while giving them carbs and simultaneously teaching an engaging lesson on theme so that nobody else in the classroom realizes what's happening behind the curtain, because those two students don't like to be called out. Or maybe it's even when you have a student who has muscular dystrophy in your classroom, and midway through the year you realize he can no longer use his arms to take off his jacket. And so you quietly every morning go and do that for him, and then you put his jacket on in the afternoon. Or when he feels that he has a relationship with you, that he can come to you and say, I can't get out of my chair. Can you help me? And you quietly do that. I hope that when my students look back at their time with me, they remember that I cared. And I don't know if that makes me legendary, but I hope that that's my legacy.
All right. I think that when I think of a legendary teacher and I think of the qualities, I kind of just go back in my mind and think of legends that I heard of growing up. So I think of King Arthur and I think of the Round Table. And I think, all right, well, he brought a whole bunch of people together, and we bring a lot of kids from different parts of St. Johns County together with a lot of different opinions, and they all have to look at each other square in the face and sometimes say them, especially in a history class. And they have to acknowledge each other's opinions and respect it. And so I think of King Arthur. And then I think of John Henry, and I think of how, he's up against all odds, taking, hammer against technology, which has a whole nother metaphor to teaching. And then I think of just having to inspire kids when the odds are definitely stacked against them in class and sometimes in life, and making those connections with kids to inspire them. I also think of Johnny Appleseed, and I think of someone who doesn't really want to do things for any real reason other than it's good for people, and they don't really care about how much money you're making, and you're just trying to make someone happy and sometimes mentally healthy, and just kind of spreading the word out of giving back to the community and making the world a better place.
When I think of the qualities that define a legendary teacher, I think they all share the qualities of passion for teaching. They're creative, they're resilient to the challenges we face every day. They have a sense of humor. That's definitely a top one. And they're loving. They love and care about the students that they work with, the families that go with those students, the teachers that they teach with, all the people that they encounter every day through their classroom and outside of it.
A legendary teacher is one that has such a positive impact on a student that they have a memory of it throughout the rest of their childhood, adulthood, and it really helps them have a positive outlook and overview of education as a whole for the rest of their lives. One experience for me was that I had a teacher in 3rd grade who introduced a book to me, and I fell so much in love with the book and with reading as a whole that I always vowed I would name my daughter after one of the characters in the book. And then years later, I introduced a student to another book, and she came to me and said, I really didn't like reading before, but now I'm in love with it. I love this whole series. I love all books, and I think I'm going to name my daughter after the main character in that book. So seeing it come right around was an amazing experience, and I want everybody to have that experience in learning.
Thinking back over the years about the influential educators in my life as a student, and then those that I've had a privilege to call colleagues, all embody the same qualities. They have passion, they have empathy, they have unwavering dedication. So for me, a legendary teacher is someone who just sees the unique potential in each and every student and just leaves a lasting imprint on lives. One teacher for me was my high school algebra teacher, and she quickly saw that my forte was not math, and I also lacked confidence. So she stayed many afternoons with me, working with me, and not just on math, but also just talking to me about the struggles that she faced as a student. And her belief in me was transformative. I not only gained the knowledge, but also the confidence to pursue challenges that I might have once avoided. And years later, her influence still echoes in my resilience and my curiosity. So my hope is that my students will remember feeling loved and valued and will carry the confidence and curiosity with them long after they leave my classroom.
The qualities and actions that define a legendary teacher is someone who is intentional about building positive relationships with their student, someone who encourages their students to always do their personal best, someone who gives their students the tools that they need to be successful, whether academically, emotionally, or socially. I am a proud product of St. Johns County School District, and I have had many, many quality, legendary teachers. But as I reflect upon my practice, I would be remembered for my songs, chants in the classrooms, and callbacks, being intentional about incorporating movement into the classroom, my enthusiasm and excitement for teaching and the art of teaching, and empowering my students to feel successful in the classroom and to be empowered to be just as legendary as I am. A legendary teacher is someone who inspires all people, especially those who need us the most, to realize their fullest potential as responsible, productive, and caring citizens.
I think a legendary teacher connects students to themselves. They bring out the person that is within that child. The adult that's in that child finds their way through legendary teachers. Like for me personally, I had a legendary teacher. He's actually from this county. His name is Mr. Jeff Dodd. He was my chorus teacher in high school, and he changed my life. I ended up going to New York City and studying theater and lived out in Los Angeles and strangely found my way back into teaching. And I had such a rich experience because Mr. Dodd showed me the way through music and theater to find who I am. And now I'm giving it back. Like I remember Mr. Dodd saying, above all, be a good human. And so I find myself repeating that to my students, and he is a legendary teacher for me.
I think some qualities that define legendary teachers are teachers that can reach the students beyond the subject matter they teach. They reach the staff as well and the community so that everyone has a lasting impression of that teacher. I know for me as an art teacher, not only am I trying to teach fundamentals of art, but I'm trying to teach them life skills of how to share, how to ask for supplies appropriately, using good manners, and working well with others who they typically wouldn't have a chance to work with in the classroom setting.
A legendary teacher, first and foremost, makes her students feel good about themselves. A legendary teacher must foster positive relationships and build a sense of community in her classroom so that students feel empowered and emboldened to share their unique qualities with the world. As I think back, I remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Albasier, who was a legendary teacher in my life. The one thing I remember about her is that she made me feel good about myself, and she instilled a lifelong love of learning, especially for language and literacy. And when I struggled, she made me feel it was okay to make a mistake. I don't know what her community contributions were. I was very young, but I know that she gave the community one thing: a teacher, me. As a preschool intensive support teacher, I strive to emulate Mrs. Albasier every single day and make my students feel so good about themselves as they begin their educational journeys and share what they believe is important to them with the world. I want my students every day to know that everything and anything is possible. And in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe that you must do the things you think you cannot do.
Legendary teachers are persistent and eternally optimistic about what they can accomplish in the classroom with their students. I often deal with struggling learners and resistant learners, and I personally cannot take no for an answer. Many students resist attempting to learn new skills, and I just ignore all the negative comments that they make, and I just plow right through and teach them the skills that I know that they need to learn.
Okay, I would say that to be a legendary teacher, you really have to make connections. It's all about making connections with students, and there needs to be trust and respect on both sides of the track. So for me, that's really been a big thing. Once you connect with that student, you're going to be able to teach them a lot more and go further along as you get to know them. Or if you don't make that connection, it makes it harder. So for me, it's just trust, respect, and connections.
To be a legendary teacher, I believe you've got to leave a legacy. And the students who you impact should remember you for years and years. And when I think of impact, I think you've really made a mark on them socially, not only academically, but socially and emotionally, and just from the inside out.